Okay, welcome everybody to the opening meeting of Marxism 2018, Join the Resistance. My name's Christine, I'm a member of the International Socialists here in Toronto, and we're excited to have everyone out tonight, so thank you all. We have a fantastic panel tonight on Workers Rising, but before I introduce them, I just want to acknowledge that the land that we're on is a territory of the Huron-Wendat and Petun First Nations, the Seneca, and most recently the Mississaugas of the Credit River. The territory was a subject of the Dish with One Spoon Wampum Belt Covenant, an agreement between the Iroquois Confederacy and the Ojibwe and allied nations to peaceably share the land. And we're grateful to be meeting and working here this weekend. As I said, we have a great panel tonight of people who've been really active in the key struggles that are going on right now. And so I want to introduce the panel, and then before I call the first speaker up, we just have a short video to show. So our first speaker is going to be Andria Babbington. Andria, many of you know, she's a vice president of the Toronto York Region Labour Council. She's a member of Unite Here, Local 75, and was very involved in their Hotel Workers Rising campaign. Our second speaker is going to be Deena Ladd, who I think really doesn't need an introduction, but Deena is a co-founder and coordinator of the Workers Action Center. She's I could go through the whole thing, but suffice to say, Deena's been active in these issues for a long time and has been a key leader in the fantastic fight for 15 and fairness. And our final speaker tonight will be Pam Johnson. Pam's a college faculty. Yeah. So Pam is a union steward for college faculty. She's an OPSEU activist, a dancer, choreographer. She was on the strike committee at Humber College and was on picket lines there for 5 weeks. And she's a leading member of the International Socialists. So before I ask Andria to come up, we're just going to show a short video that's greetings from Josh Hollins, who's a member of the Socialist Workers Party in Britain, and he has been on strike with the university workers there.
My name is Josh Hollins. I'm a member of the Socialist Workers Party in Britain and a member of the University and Colleges Union, OPSEU, in London. I want to bring solidarity and greetings to everyone there at Toronto at Marxism this weekend. In Britain, we've had an incredible experience in the Universities Union this past term. We've been fighting to defend our pensions, our conditions. Our bosses are trying to change our pension scheme from one of defined benefits, so you know what you put in and what you get out, to one of defined contributions, so you know what you put in. It's going to be even more than what you're paying now, but you're not going to know what you're going to get out. It's going to be floated on the stock market, and we don't think that's the way in which you should run your pension scheme. In universities, though, it's been absolutely transformative. We've taken over 14 days of strike action now in higher education. The support from students has been brilliant. We've marched through snow, sleet, rain, sunshine as well sometimes, and we've seen our membership increase massively because we're taking this action. But we also know it's not just about defending and fighting for our pensions. It's about so much more. And on the strikes, on the picket lines, some of the most transformative things have been discussing what kind of system we want to see, what kind of education we want. And that's one without a gender pay gap. It's one that says we won't spy on our Muslim and our migrant students. We're going to stand up to racism. And it's one about saying that education shouldn't be run for profit, the profit of our university bosses who make millions of pounds in Britain. And yet, you know, new teaching staff like myself are on precarious, hourly contracts. And of course, more established academics are under attack too. So full solidarity and greetings. We've been so inspired in Britain by the strike action that educators across North America are taking at the moment, as I'm sure you have been too. And let's keep up conversation of how we can fight for a world, for an education system across the world that is for the many, not the few.
Okay, great. So please join me in welcoming Andria Babbington.
Thank you. So I want to talk a little bit about, I think, the turmoil, the kind of victory, the joy. I think this, in a sense, the struggle that as working class people have been going through, and I know this could be a lifetime of storytelling, but I just want to gear it in a little bit around a very important time when labor and community got together to take on this kind of a fight, and the result of it, and also where can we go from here. I came out of the hospitality sector. The hotel sector was a place, and still is, that most employers see as a revolving door to take in mostly immigrant. They're not just doing it to be nice, they're telling us a lot of times, if you don't like what you get here, you could move on, somebody else will come along. And so as they do this and they're exploiting worker, in many ways. One, if you're someone of color, mostly women, and oftentimes some of us, and I'll say myself because there was a time in that, when that happened, but we leave families behind. A lot of us get on the plane here with maybe a handful of our family, or we leave them all behind thinking we just need to have a good job. We don't want a handout. And then we can take care of our family. And so the employer got a wind of it that this is the only way. If you take people in and then exploit them, pay them less than the other, you don't have to ask your coworker how much, because they're not going to tell you how much they make. They can then take a lot of out of immigrant, and it's not just pay wage. It's breaking people's body with overloading them with workload. And a lot of us as immigrants come in this country where we look up to our generation before us and respect. And for the first time, we're facing the boss who's disrespecting us, and we're nobody. Anyway, one key thing that came about when these employers start getting greedy around how they can make a lot of money, and every few months they would call these meetings to show people a cake. They would give them the cake, and then they would put a pie on the wall to show what percentage of gains they make off of the back of these workers. And so the only difference, we were unionized worker. So a lot of us would go home saying, we're sad, we're broken, we're disrespectful, respected, but we're way better than our neighbors who don't have union. We dream of changes and wonder how that's going to come about. We just accept. And so just moving back to a time I remember, and I couldn't figure it out as somebody new in this country, around the days of Mike Harris. And to this day, if you go into our community, a lot of our people still don't connect the dot. This was another opportunity where politicians saw, they look at us as people taking handout, and also how they could disrespect us. And so in that time of Mike Harris, I remember, and maybe somebody know it different from me, but this was my observation, was a time to look at worker who came here, want the best, and say, you know what, suck it up. If you don't have enough, just go in the supermarket and get the Dent can. It's cheaper. I remember that. Those are cheaper. And if you have your children and they're complaining about low wages, then they would tell us the story of the time they were sweeping down at CNE, sweeping horse manure and all those things, so suck it up. But they never share how they move up in life and their standard raised for them. And so I welcome it, along with the support of the Toronto and York Region Labour Council, when I would say thanks, and big thanks to Workers' Action Center, when they launched the campaign to take on a wage increase and start off at the $14 increase. And so we struggle as unionized workers, wondering what that have to do with us. And unfortunately, we learned the hard way that one of the things that politicians was doing each time they're getting ready for election, they would pit workers against workers. They would pit them. They would say, if neighbor over there, those are union fat cat over there, they're the better off. And so a lot of us didn't get to know that neighbors and neighbors were struggling. They couldn't make ends meet. Some of them had a collective agreement, but they were getting different pay. They were hurt on the job, and a lot of them still have to press on because they need the income to prove to immigration that they could file for their family. And I have to tell you this, when I set out on the road along the street corner talking to people about standing up together for a wage increase, I wasn't talking to our unionized members. I was talking to other people in the community who was looking at me, and some of them was angry, saying, go away, look at me and look at my age, I'm going to retire with nothing because we'll never ever win what you're asking for. And then there was some that say it sounds good, but then my boss is just going to beat me up anyway. And so we had to go back into our own workplace as a union and really organize workers there to say nothing wrong, and you don't have to be ashamed. If your employer chooses to make the wealth off your back and you have a collective agreement, nothing wrong. All you need is power. And if your community, your family is saying, let's join together to change that, let's take this opportunity. And so we took it on. And it wasn't with rush. It wasn't with rush. Because a lot of us as labor was still struggling with the fact that if we go out there and say a lot of our members was making low wage, then it make us look weak. So we were not looking at the elephant in the room. And eventually, with a lot of conversation and a lot of opportunity to reach out into the community and hear their side, knowing that those was our family, our children, we were worrying about that after all that to get them here, they didn't have a future. And so we had to put our pride aside to fight, if anything, for the next generation. Politician, we know when it's time for election, we are going, wow, there must be the genie, the genius. How did they know that we have those problems? And then suddenly, election is over, and we're back to become the fat cat. And we met with the Ford Nation shortly after that saw us on a gravy train going down the street. And again, we look at each other saying, okay, so it's Hussey was talking, the same working poor. And quickly, we start moving together with the community. I think first time more than ever, the hand reaching in the community was there through labor. The first time where we got together really close, because this was our struggle. And the first time we were pushing back politicians to say, stop telling us your personal, your wannabe personal story. Respect us, respect us. And out of that, we made changes, we made gain. We made gain out of that, but unfortunately, we wake up in the new year thinking, wow, like we should find some time to really walk over to our neighbors in the community that doesn't have a collective agreement and really thank them for putting themselves out there for the kind of gains that we were able to accomplish. I remember workers who cried because the employer would fire them because they would not give them enough notice on their schedule. We have a collective agreement. This was a victory for them. And the community brought that forward. Now they have to give notice. Sick days. Time with your loved one. They're saying, thank you, thank you, thank you. The community did that for us for a change. And so we have something to lose. And I am worried. I feel like I'm behind time because there's an election coming up where I don't have a running shoes to go fast enough to talk to my neighbor again and my coworkers about all these gains that we made, how we stand to lose it. We stand to lose it if we take our eyes off the prize. We're gonna go backward and start doing the same. Our employer is waiting for it because unfortunately it's the same group of politicians who is here saying what I did before was in the name of the boss. And so it's an opportunity to roll it back. It's an opportunity for our children to go right backward to where they start, not having a future. It's an opportunity for us having employer disrespecting us. It's an opportunity for us to have more part of our bodies broken for overwork while somebody celebrate the gain of our back. It's also important that we also look at what we were able to accomplish, again, with a wage increase, with the help of the community that pushed that forward, where, again, we stand to lose that. And so, as I bring these things in front of you, and I'm sure Sister Deena will elaborate on that a little bit, I really want to figure out a plan with my union, along with the Labor Council, to figure out how can we make sure that we stop this? How can we make sure that no one ever look at our people saying, go look for the dent can in the supermarket aisle? How can our children graduate with pride? I know I'm still trying to get rid of my son out of my house, right? So I would like to know that he's going out there with pride because he finds a job, he finds something that he's happy with, and not just settling for disrespect. Somebody who take away human rights from us. And so there's a lot to lose. So I want to make sure that we are really getting ready, getting ourselves prepared, that come the election day, we know the right thing. We already start pushing back on politicians to say, no, this is our time. It's our right. It's our human rights. And it's about working people. Thank you.
So thank you, Andria. Our next speaker will be Deena Ladd.
Hello. Okay, so I have 15 minutes, and so of course I would love to get into like the nitty-gritty of the Fight for 15 campaign and all the stories, but you're going to have to join me for a bottle of wine for that. But what I am going to talk about in the 15 minutes that I have, and hopefully we can have a conversation in the discussion, is sort of if you've got sort of more questions about what I'm saying, I'm happy to go into a bit more detail. So I was asked to talk about what led to the success of the Fight for 15 and Fairness campaign, and what has, what are some of the thinkings that I have about that. And I guess before I get into some of the key issues, I just want to say a couple of things. In 1998, I was asked to write a paper for the Canadian Labour Congress, the Women's Committee, about how we should build power. And that paper that I wrote was called No Easy Recipe. And so I basically just want to preface everything that I have to say with, there is no bloody easy recipe to do this work. It is hard, it's messy, it makes you want to cry and scream, and it is brutal. That's all I can say. And so I wish I could stand here in front of you and say, we found the magic formula. We have the silver bullet. I have the recipe to tell you. But there isn't one. There really isn't one. It's just meant a lot of bloody organizing and a lot of hard conversations and a lot of work and a lot of building of relationships. And I will talk to you about more what that means. The second thing I want to say, because I think it's important to say this at the beginning and not throughout the presentation, is that it is 2018, my friends. And so if your movement and if your building of any organization or any campaigns does not have a base or at least of 50% people of color, I'm not interested. I'm not friggin' interested anymore. I've been doing this work for too many years, and I've been having these same conversations for too many friggin' years. I remember 1995, the Ontario Federation of Labour had a community unionism conference where we had the same conversation about how we're supposed to build our organizing. As I said, I wrote that bloody paper in 1998. It's not even on the internet. I got hard copies at home. And so all I'm saying is that, you know, at this day and age, if you don't know what I'm talking about in terms of building an intersectional representative group, then you got to do your own work and find out about it. And if you do know what that means and you're not doing it, then I would say that your organizing is going to fail. Because frankly, at this day and age and at this point in the work that we're doing in Toronto, where the majority is immigrants and people of color, if that is not what your movement looks like, then I would say it's a kiss of death. So I'm just going to say that because I think it's important to say that. And I also think in our class analysis and in our understanding of labor organizing, if we do not have an integrated analysis of the nexus between immigration and labor, you are missing the boat. Because if you don't understand how immigration, as it presently is existing in this country right now, and how it impacts the lives of workers in this country, you will never figure out how to organize, you will never figure out how to build a movement that is representative, that can meet the needs of the people that you're working with, and you will never be able to connect with them in a deep way that will sustain the building of the leadership that we are talking about always, about understanding what it means to build a strong movement that is at the intersections of what socialism is all about. So I think it's really critical for us to understand how deep the connection is between immigration and labor, and how that should fundamentally inform our perspective of class struggle and around how we do labor organizing. And if we don't understand that, then we better do some heavy conversations and some discussion. And I'm not talking about identity politics. I'm not talking about, oh, I'm a person of color, so I get to speak first. No, that is bullshit if that's what you're thinking. That is total bullshit. That's not what I'm talking about. What I'm talking about is building a strong intersectional movement that can actually sustain and build the struggle that is needed. And I fundamentally think, and I believe, that the reason why our work in the 15 and Fairness campaign got to where it did was because we have that. And it is the base and the core and the foundation of the work that we do. And that is one of my lessons that I've learned over the 25 years that I've been doing this organizing, because I certainly didn't start out that way. And so I think it's about learning through struggle, but also really understanding then it's not just about learning, it's about them bloody well putting it in practice. So I'm just going to put that as my 2 comments at the beginning. So I think that one of the most fundamental reasons why I believe the campaign around the 15 and Fairness has been so successful is because its base, its foundation, its roots have been within the Workers' Action Centre. And our centre has made it its mission to reach out and to represent and to work with people who are the most marginalized, who are the ones that have the least power in workplaces. And so I'm talking about part-time, temp, contract. I'm talking about migrants, I'm talking about immigrants, I'm talking about people of color, I'm talking about women, I'm talking about people who are invisible in our workplaces, where people don't even see the work that they do on a daily basis, where your eyes just glide over them because they don't give a fucking shit what happens to you at night. And when you're working, they don't care who does the cleaning at night, they don't care who's serving the tables, they don't care who's at the back of the restaurants. Those are the people that we need to ensure that are the priority of our labor movement and of our organizing, because they have been the backbone of this campaign, and they have provided the most incredible leadership and strength to our center and to our ability to see a huge vision before us in our organizing. And so I stand here with confidence. I stand here with confidence and with the strength of the organizing that I've been doing with those members. in practicing how to challenge those employers, how to take on when an employer is not paying you because you don't have your papers, and they can just basically say, you want your wages? I'm going to call CBSA and let's see what you do. If you don't have a strategy to figure that out, then how the hell are we supposed to build a movement that will represent people? Right? And so at the Worker Center, those are the kinds of things that we have been practicing how to do. How do you challenge employers when the workers are working through a temp agency? How do you challenge employers when people are not even paid their wages? And where the employer has a revolving door of people where they don't give a shit if they don't pay their wages, because they just say, here's a claim form. Go file a claim. I don't give a shit, you know, because no one's going to come after my ass and get your wages. If we don't understand how to organize in those situations, then how do we build confidence? How do we build confidence with the people that we are wanting to so-called organize with and work with? And so the history of working on these issues, such as, you know, starting in 2002 when we launched the $10 minimum wage campaign in the Jane and Finch area, doing all the work that we've been doing on wage theft with workers who have just been absolutely ignored in this province when they've gone to get their paychecks. Our work with caregivers who've been pushing against illegal recruitment fees, having their passports taken away, the incredible abuse that they face because they're tied to someone's home. Temp agencies and their rampant disregard of labor rights in this country, and have been running roughshod over our communities for friggin' decades, through experience of trying to struggle against that, and all in non-unionized jobs with no protection. That has helped us understand how to build leadership of workers who are directly affected by those working conditions, to formulate a vision and a sense of how to move forward. And it has helped us build an understanding of what has been needed to counter that. And so for us, fundamentally, you know, I remember when we started to feel more confident in about 2005 to start working with unions. And at first, I mean, because I'm the fundraiser at the Workers' Action Center, so of course, some of the first initial conversations that I had with some unions were about, well, you know, we want to make sure our name is on your leaflets and all that kind of stuff. And I was like, no bloody way, right? Because no one's going to ever pick up a leaflet if it has your name on it. And so, but what was interesting is that there was this kind of sense by unions were like, oh, well, yeah, you're going to feed me, you know, tips on organizing. You know, we'll give you money if you, you know, give us some ideas. And I said to them, you know what? 99% of the people that phone our hotline, you couldn't bloody organize. You could not organize because, first of all, they work through subcontractors, they work through temp agencies, they're in small workplaces, or they're working through labor leases, or they're misclassified as self-employed. You couldn't even unionize them anyways. So because we've been doing this hotline now for 18 years and dealing with those kinds of issues, we fundamentally understand the connection between union and non-union workers. Most of the workers that come to the center would love to form a union. They're not stupid. They actually understand that the ESA is a piece of shit and that they don't have any protection from being fired. A union would be bloody great. But guess what? No one's organizing in their workplaces, right? So fundamentally, we knew when we formulated the demands for the fight for 15 and fairness that part of those demands was stopping misclassification, making misclassifying workers illegal, joint and several liability between subcontractors, making sure the client company is responsible for temp agencies. Now, of course, that wasn't union certification, but we knew that if we don't fundamentally ensure that the employer at the top of the pyramid, who is dictating the wages, the working conditions, and who is holding the power, if they are not held responsible, you can kiss that union job goodbye, because it wouldn't be worth the piece of paper it's written on, because nobody's going to be able to negotiate a contract. You're going to just be able to close shop and start up again. And so for us, the 15 in Fairness campaign is not just about the minimum wage. And this was one of the debates we've had with many different people, is to say, fundamentally, at the beginning, no, we didn't say, you know, certification for everyone, because frankly, you could have certification for everyone at this moment, but it wouldn't mean a shit, because workers still couldn't organize, because there's massive loopholes in the legislation, right? Like, you can't organize a union when the employer who's really dictating the way in which that workplace works is not held responsible. We've learned that with Nike, with Adidas, with international overseas corporations, and what's been happening in Bangladesh and in China. We know this internationally. Well, guess what? It's domestic as well, right? And of course, the food service workers' strike at York was a perfect example of this, right? So the thing is that what was so critical in the 15 in Fairness list of demands was the integrated analysis of how union and non-union workers would be impacted, and how that struggle is absolutely intertwined in the labor legislation stuff that we wanted. And so what I want to talk about is what we've won. And what we've found is, since we've won the reforms, that is exactly what has happened, right? What we have seen is the equal pay for equal work. What has that meant? That has meant a tool for unions now to fundamentally redress and go after, in whether it's public sector or private sector, the most egregious ways in which our employers have systematically dismantled our benefits and our wages just because of what they've bloody called us, right? Because they call us temporary full-time, part-time casual, relief. I mean, they're very creative with the terminology. It's amazing. And so I think that what we've seen, and I'll give you an example. There was this great article that was sent to me about Algonquin College, who's outraged because the bill that they are now faced with in implementing equal pay for equal work is $20 million. $20 million. And of course, this article was like, well, yeah, you know, and it's the price is really high, and it's really high actually in this one because, you know, the conditions actually have been really, really terrible, right? And actually, they're having to fundamentally admit, through equal pay for equal work, that because they have absolutely been treating workers unequally, and fundamentally this has happened to many racialized women and women's jobs, that now they're having to catch up. And of course they're pissed about it. They're not happy about it. I mean, they're absolutely mad, right? And then we see private sector, because of that equal pay for equal work, an employer which will not be named because it's still happening, they basically said to us that the union said that this has meant that this employer will have to hire 700 workers directly because they have been using 700 temp agency workers, right? That's just one example. One example. I was at a QP79 meeting where the shop steward for the recreational workers, they have always been paid minimum wage, but she said, and so their wages have fundamentally gone up from $11.60 to $14 an hour. But guess what? The part-timers never got paid sick days. Never had paid sick days. So she's like, now my 8,000 members who are all part-timers, young workers, women, now, for the first time ever in their contract, they now have personal emergency leave days, right? I don't know if you know, but Ontario is the only province in this country now has 2 paid sick days, unless you live in Prince Edward Island. And then, in order to get 1 paid sick day, you would have had to work 5 years consecutively for the same company to be able to get that 1 bloody paid sick day, and that 1 paid sick day for the rest of your life. And so in removing the exemption to personal emergency leave, 1.7 million people now have access to job-protected leave. This is huge for women. One of the biggest issues that women come talk to us is the fact that they need the flexibility with their lives because they are the major caregivers. They are the ones responsible when their kid is sick. They are the ones responsible if one of the parents has to go to a doctor's appointment. And they put their jobs on the line every single friggin' day with so much incredible stress. And now they have job-protected leave and no medical notes, which is huge for low-wage workers. So, of course, that is in addition to the scheduling, which I think will be massive for part-time workers that will come into effect in January. And I haven't even mentioned the minimum wage, right? Which is like, you know, which is what everybody's been talking about, but people haven't been talking about all this other stuff. And the other thing that people don't realize is for the first time, we actually have public holiday pay, which is now paid equally to part-time workers. And that's why the restaurant industry, hospitality and tourism are madly lobbying the cabinet right now because they want to be exempt, because it's costing the industry millions and millions of dollars because they've been shortchanging and ripping people off for years. And now they can't do that. And that is another victory. So I'm going to close off because, as I said, I only have 15 minutes. So June 7th, everybody's having a heart attack about June 7th, right? I've started drinking a lot more, let me tell you. Anyways, now one of the biggest interesting things that I've heard around this is people see those lovely lawn signs, right? Because I would expect that everybody here will be leaving with one of those lawn signs or window signs tonight. I'll be standing at the door, checking your bags. Anyway, so one of the things that I've heard, which is really interesting in terms of what's at stake on June 7th, is that people think that we're liberal lovers because we want to put those up there. Have you heard that? So now, yeah, exactly, right? So because the Liberal government introduced this legislation, which we bloody worked our asses off for, because now we want to put up those signs that say, proud to support $15, we're now called Liberal lovers. So this is the kind of bullshit partisanship that is happening with this election. And it's really important for us to be very clear with what's going on here. Those demands, that sign sends a bloody strong message to every minimum wage earner in your community that they should be bloody proud of fighting for decent wages, and that they should not be ashamed of fighting for more, and that they should have the confidence and the ability to have each other's back that we deserve decent work. Now you tell me in your community, when is the last time you walked past signs that said we should be proud of having decent wages and working conditions? That's what that sign is about. That sign is about telling every bloody boss in my community, because let me tell you, I have that sign, even though someone's been bloody stealing it every few months. I put one back up this week. And anyway, so it's a sign to every employer in my neighborhood, in my community, that says, don't you be bloody well telling me you're against the $15, because I ain't going to shop at your company. And that's what we need to do. We need to build people's confidence and expectation that you can fight for change, that you can challenge shitty working conditions, you can fight for better collective agreements, and you can win. And you can have your community having your back, right? And that is what that sign says. And so to me, fundamentally, what's at stake with the June 7th is, of course, you know, absolutely. I was there when Mike Harris got elected in '95. I have the scars to prove it. And I really don't want to have to go back to those days. And I feel that if we truly believe that we are not prepared to go back to 1995 with Mike Harris, because frankly, I feel we haven't even recovered from that time period. The Liberals did not restore what they took away in '95. We have been fighting God knows what, how long were they in power? 15 years, 16 years? To try and restore what was lost. So what is going to happen if the Tories get a majority is we are going to go a lot worse than 1995, okay? Because we haven't won what's back, what we lost at that point. And so what's really important at this moment is to build the confidence in our communities that not only is this worth fighting for, and to be pushing forward on June 7th, and is the fact that June 16th is a demo that we've called for. Because basically what we're saying is that we don't care who gets elected on, I mean, of course we care, right? But regardless of who gets elected on June 7th, we are going to be organizing for decent work. And that is really important because people are feeling very demoralized. They're feeling very nervous about what's happening. But we have to build people's confidence. This is not the time to be demoralized. This is the time to work our asses off and to make sure that we're knocking on every single doors in our communities and making sure that people have the information that they need to make the right decision. And frankly, through our experience in the last couple of weeks of door knocking, of leafleting, of phone banking hundreds of workers, we are exactly finding that people have misinformation. They do not have the proper information. And when you take the time to talk to people, we are turning people's opinions. And that is really critical. That is really critical. So we can't just sort of say, oh, well, you know, we might as well give up. I am not giving up. And I think that none of us should give up. And we should be working as hard as we can to ensure that our communities have the information that they have. And there is a ton of stuff that we can do. The lawn signs are one. We've got a fantastic leaflet that's happening on May the 5th, where there's flyers at the table. We literally have every single day of the next month mapped out. So I'm sorry, if those of you in this room are busy on Monday, well, guess what? We've got something on Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, okay? So if you have 2 hours to spare in a week, to leaflet and work with us to ensure that people have the confidence that they need to enter into this election, then join with us, and thank you for listening to me. Thank you.
Okay, so thank you, Deena, and I'm going to welcome up Pam Johnson.
Thank you, and it's fantastic to speak here with Andria and with Deena. And I'm going to be talking about the college strike. And Deena referred to Algonquin College's wage theft, and that's exactly why we were on strike. And our strike was also very much intertwined in the votes around minimum wage and Bill 148 and that victory. And so it's very much pulling together the threads tonight. So last October, 12,000 college faculty in 24 colleges in Ontario went on strike for 5 weeks. We are members of OPSEU, the Ontario Public Service Employees Union, and this was the largest strike with the biggest geographic reach in Ontario in quite a long time. And when teachers strike, the impact is amplified because, of course, the students and their families are directly affected. In this case, 500,000 students. And let me say, it was a fantastic strike. Similar to what Josh in the video said about the UK university strike, it was transformative and it was celebratory. Our members supported it massively on the picket lines. We had student support. We had solidarity from the labor movement and social movements, and we had popular support. So even the corporate media was kind of nice to us. And we were aware going into our bargaining cycle that it would coincide with the Bill 148 and the $15 minimum wage votes in the Ontario legislature. We were also aware when we entered the bargaining cycle that the issue of precarious work in our sector had become a defining issue. And even though our sector includes some of the highest paid public sector workers, the reality is that over 70% of faculty are on 4-month contracts with few or no benefits. Some are unionized, some are not. And contract faculty have to essentially apply for their job every school term. So that's two or three times a year, no matter how long they've taught, no matter how well they do their job. Yeah, indeed. Building solidarity between the growing numbers of contract faculty and full-time faculty really created the solid foundation that our strike was built on. The decision by our union to frame our struggle right out of the gate as a fight against precarious work was key to building the solidarity among our members, the students, and the public. And we knew we were building on the foundation of amazing movements like the Fight for 15 in the US, the 15 in Fairness campaign here, and our own campaign, Contract Faculty Forward, which was putting the issue of precarious work in Ontario's colleges onto the agenda. And it's such an irony that our students attend college in order to get decent, secure jobs, but that the people teaching them are precarious workers. And this is not lost on our students, and it wasn't lost on the public either. The first missives floated to the media by the colleges was that if striking faculty got their way, they'd be making huge salaries, over $100,000. And really, you could almost hear the giant guffaw across the province by faculty. It is increasingly out of reach for most faculties to get to the top of the pay scale, and it's not even possible if you don't have a full-time job. It just did not square with our reality. So this strategy backfired miserably among our own members, our students, who were suffering this situation as well of not having access to their precarious teachers, who had to have to run off to their next job at another college somewhere else. It also backfired in the media because it was clear that our strike had popular support. And the mood on our picket lines was quite solid from the beginning. At my college, 1,000 of 1,400 faculty were on the picket line in the first week, but it was really over the course of the strike that this solidarity among their members and the strike itself grew stronger. And just to give you a flavor of what I was hearing on the picket line, faculty who said, "I didn't vote for the strike, but I'm so glad I'm out here now." Faculty who said, "I'm retiring soon, I don't really need to be out here, but I'm here for the future and for the contract faculty." And every single day, from the minute I hit the picket line to the end of my shift, it was nonstop and intense debate and conversation. The faculty had the opportunity to openly discuss their working conditions. This is something that is taboo and fear-inducing when we're at work in the workplace. It was also the opportunity to discuss how the college system is run. There was a new recognition among many that the priorities of the colleges are at odds with the needs of our students for quality education and the needs of the faculty for decent working conditions. And this strengthened the resolve on the picket line. Many faculty really saw for the first time what the role of the union was, that it was not some sort of third party with interests separate from the faculty, but was actually the vehicle for faculty interests, and that it could be the lever for trying to change things. And the operation of the strike itself was a huge undertaking, but the level of self-organization, the number of members stepping up to the tasks of the strike was amazing. Picket captains and picket squads formed in a few days. Many contract faculty members were participating. Flying squads formed to visit MPPs and participate in actions off the line. A cyber strike unit was formed to create a social media storm. Art squads were formed to create placards at rallies and picket lines, and members organized this all and trained each other right on the lines. There were fantastic rallies in the first week at Humber that Andria spoke at, a mass GTA rally that Pam from 15 in Fairness spoke at. She's somewhere around here. Province-wide general strike at Queen's Park. Flying pickets were harassing Deb Matthews, the Minister for Higher Education, all over the place, visiting MPP's office. And we had excellent solidarity from other trade unionists refusing to cross our lines to make deliveries onto our campuses. We had steel workers, we had OPSEU, we had CUPE, and other teachers' unions came out to our lines. And of course, we had the fantastic and absolutely amazing support of our students who came to the picket lines and rallies with their homemade signs. And it was clear to most of them that the problem was not the teachers, but the colleges. That the teachers were striking for working conditions, but also for student education. When the employer, after leaving us stranded on the picket line for weeks, called a forced vote on their shitty offer, people were steamed. They organized, and it really kicked everyone into motion to make sure that all the members knew what was in that shitty contract. Faculty participated in mass union meetings across the province. An historic meeting at my college, Humber, 500 people came out to a union meeting, and it really became clear what the power of the strike was in that moment. The fact that members were out talking to other members, phone banking, small meetings, initiating their own activity to make sure that members knew. And the result of this ratification, this forced vote, was an overwhelming and absolute no. The turnout was incredible, 95%, and 86% of people voted no to the contract. And for us, this was absolutely the high point of the strike. At Humber, we were on our picket lines, but we crowded around a cafe TV watching the results, and a giant cheer went up when we saw the numbers. Yes, Rena? And it was going down the picket lines like a wave. But it was only a few hours after that, after Kathleen Wynne had been saying for weeks, "I will not intervene in your strike," that in fact she legislated us back to work. And our strike was settled by an arbitrator. Actually almost completely in our favor. We made gains on all of our demands without taking concessions. So despite being legislated back, the strike was really a victory for us. And it was strike action that secured the gains that we got. And it was solid participation from faculty on the picket lines that gave the energy and power to this strike. But little did we know that our strike would be the beginning of what has become a wave of resistance in education by both teachers and students. When West Virginia teachers defied the state government and their union leadership to initiate a historic strike on February 22nd, it has sparked a wave of resistance. Their success and the victory of their strike lit a flame that is quickly spreading across the US right now and beyond. In less than 2 months, teachers in mainly Republican Party-controlled red states and right-to-work states built mass protests and strikes. In Arizona, Oklahoma, Kentucky, and now Colorado, teachers have struck, they've walked out, they've walked in to demand better working conditions for themselves and better learning conditions for their students. In West Virginia, teachers took the inspiration from the history of the struggles of miners in the coal fields who struck in the early 20th century, some of the bloodiest and also most important strikes in the history of the labor movement. Small walkouts began in February, organized by the sons and daughters of coal miners who had stood on picket lines themselves. Oklahoma, teachers flooded their state capital and went door to door, knocking at the state legislator's office to demand that not only they fund the wages, but they restore the millions that have been cut from education. And they declared a victory after a 9-day strike. They got pay boosts for themselves, but also for the support staff, for the cafeteria staff, and for the bus drivers, and they had millions reinvested into classrooms and supplies. In Arizona, where teachers' pay is the lowest of any state, you can roll that down in a second, Arizona Educators United, a coalition of teachers, support staff, and administrators, initiated a Red for Ed campaign. Their demands for better pay for all school staff, support, and teachers, but also the demand was for per pupil funding. And yesterday, Arizona teachers walked out after the governor and the state legislatures failed to meet their demands. 50,000 teachers and supporters marched to the Capitol in 100-degree Fahrenheit heat. The Republican governor tried to avert the strike by promising a 20% raise in the next 3 years, but teachers were not having that. They demanded that education funding be restored after a decade of cuts. One of the Red for Ed leaders said, "I can't walk back into my classroom without getting more for my students and this movement." Colorado teachers also walked out yesterday, and there will be more to come. And this is just a little video from today in Arizona. And
Over 50,000 people flooding Arizona's state capital. The largest teacher walkout so far in a protest movement that is sweeping the country.
There's a lot of people here who need a better wage. That's the bottom line.
In a state where student-to-teacher ratios and teacher pay are among the worst in the nation, educators are calling for a 20% raise, no new tax cuts, and nearly $1 billion in funding for education.
It's a shame that they can't find a new revenue stream for us similar story. Teachers surrounding the Capitol demanding to be heard.
We're here to shape our youth, and if we don't have the resources to do that, what's going to happen to our students when they grow up?
The demonstrations inspired by previous walkouts in West Virginia, Oklahoma, and Kentucky. Arizona's governor says he'll give teachers a 20% raise, but over 3 years.
Right now I'm working with legislators, both Republicans and Democrats, so that we can get this solved.
So far, no agreement yet, and some teachers and lawmakers worry the money might not be there.
Okay. Yeah, he's working hard now. It's amazing to see what's happening with these governors suddenly finding money in the system for the teachers. And it hasn't just been the teachers. We've also seen the students rising up in this same period, especially in the U.S. Parkland high school students organizing the March for Our Lives brought 1 million people out into the streets in the U.S., led by high school students around gun control. These events are some of the biggest protests that have actually happened in the United States. And it's not just in the U.S. UK teachers struck for weeks, as Josh talked about. Teachers in Brazil are also in the front line of resistance. And back here in Canada, Carleton University faculty were on strike to defend their pensions, and York University contract faculty and teachers, teaching assistants remain on a protracted strike for job security. And this week, Montreal teachers have called for a May Day strike on Tuesday, May 1st. Like West Virginia teachers, Montreal teachers voted for this illegal strike against the wishes of their trade union leader, carrying that forward. And I just want to go to my conclusion to say that it's really notable that the mass strikes in the US happened mainly in Republican controlled red states that overwhelmingly supported Trump. And the president of the American Federation of Teachers said this: those who voted for Trump may have wanted to shake up the system, but there's a lot of other people that want to shake up unfairness. You saw that in the women's marches, you saw that in the Me Too movement, you see that in the kids in Parkland who rallied for stricter gun control. Similarly, the usual right-wing talking points about teachers are greedy and they don't care about their students, it is backfiring. In all of these struggles around the schools, students and parents have been upfront showing their support for strikers, for teachers. And this movement is exposing the Trump Republicans' real agenda. Trump campaigns on the jobs, but you know he is not tweeting his support to these striking workers. But Trump and also Doug Ford are also attempting to relate to the real anger that people have, but they are doing it by stoking fear, hate, division, and racism. And this resistance by these teachers is proving by the students that it is the protests and the strikes that masses of people are participating in that is getting the job done. It is teachers' resistance that is going beyond just their own economic demands to broader political demands that is forcing these governments and buddies like that to refund education and stop the cuts and austerity. And what we've seen in this struggle is that people are ready to resist and they're ready to fight for a better life. Even if Ford is elected, we know that it is the same here. It matters what people do on the ground, organizing in their workplaces, organizing in their unions, organizing in movements like the Fight for 15 and Fairness. And it matters that there are organized socialists, like the people putting on this conference, myself, many people in the room today, with class politics that can engage with this anger that so many workers are feeling as employers and governments continue to squeeze us and download. And we can channel it. We can channel it away from hate, away from racism and fear, and we can channel it towards a better system, like these teachers are doing in the US and people here. So even in the face of what could be a Ford victory here, we have the possibility to resist. And I certainly strongly encourage anyone here who would like to join us in the International Socialists to help make that happen.
Okay, so thank you again to the panel. We're going to open it up now if people want to make a comment.